Jiho stood at the large window of his spaceship and watched Nexus Prime grow bigger as they got closer. The space station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. It had tall towers that sparkled like jewels and rings that spun slowly around. The center. Ships from 12 different alien races came and went like busy insects. "Commander, we will arrive in 20 minutes, said his pilot, a young woman named Su Jin. She wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's space fleet, but today might be the last day anyone wore those uniforms. Jiho nodded but did not speak. Today, the Galactic Council would decide if humans could join their military. For 50 years, Earth had been part of the Federation as a junior member. They could trade, explore, and live on other worlds, but they could not carry weapons or fight in wars. The other alien races had all grown past their violent days long ago. The tall, thin Zentorians had stopped fighting wars 3,000 years ago. The crystal-like Etherians had never fought at all. They solved problems by talking and thinking together. Even the strong bear-like Corvani had given up violence centuries ago. But humans were different. Humans still remembered war. Su Jin landed the ship in a docking bay that was designed for human vessels. Everything looked clean and peaceful. Soft. Music played from hidden speakers. The air smelled like flowers. Even the robots that helped unload cargo moved slowly and quietly. Jiho and his team walked through long hallways toward the council chamber. Ambassador Taimin walked beside him, carrying a case full of papers and data tablets. Taimin had spent months preparing for this day, gathering evidence of humanity's progress and peaceful intentions. "Do you think they will say yes?" Sujin asked quietly. Taimin adjusted his formal diplomatic robes. "I hope so. We have shown them our art, our music, our science. We have helped build colonies and trade routes. We have been good members of the Federation." But Jiho was not so sure. He had read the reports. He knew what the other races thought about humans. They saw the old videos from Earth's wars. They studied human psychology and found something that scared them. Humans could be very violent when they needed to be. The council chamber was a perfect circle with 12 high seats for the alien leaders. In the center was a smaller chair where Taimin would sit. Around the edges were viewing areas for observers and reporters from across the galaxy. Taimin took his seat while Jiho and Sujin found places in the human section. The chamber filled with beings from many worlds. Some looked like tall plants with moving branches. Others were covered in fur or scales. A few were so strange that humans had no words to describe them. The Council Prime was Velthari of the Etherians. She looked like a woman made of living crystal, beautiful but cold. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes. "We gather today to decide a matter of great importance," Velthari said. "The human race has requested full military membership in the Galactic Federation. We must decide if this is wise." The first speaker was Admiral Kethmore of the Zentorians. He was tall and blue with large eyes and no hair. His species had not fought a war in 3,000 years. "Honorable Council," Kethmore said, "we have studied human history carefully. In just the last century, humans fought 2 world wars that killed over 100 million people. They created weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Even now, they train their children to play games of war and violence. A holographic display showed scenes from Earth's past, soldiers fighting in trenches, bombs falling from the sky, cities burning." Sujin looked away, but she could not escape. The sounds of gunfire and screaming. "More concerning," Kethmore continued, "is their psychology. Humans have what they call warrior instincts. They enjoy competition, aggression, and dominance. They create entertainment based on conflict and violence. This is not the behavior of a civilized species." The next speaker was Counselor Thais of the plant-like Verdani. "We have observed human military exercises," Thys said in a voice like rustling leaves. "Their tactics are disturbing. They plan not just to defeat enemies but to completely destroy them. They study ways to cause maximum fear and confusion. They train to fight even when hopeless, even when surrender would be logical." More images appeared. Human soldiers training in harsh conditions. Special forces learning to fight with knives and bare hands. military academies teaching strategy and tactics that seemed brutal to species that had forgotten war. Taimin was allowed to respond. He stood up slowly, his face calm, but his hands shaking slightly. "Respected Council," he said, "yes, humanity has a violent past, but we have grown beyond it. We have not fought a major war in over 60 years. We have channeled our competitive nature into sports, art, and science. Our military exists only to protect our own worlds from asteroids and natural disasters." Velthari's crystal face showed no expression. "Ambassador, we appreciate your words. But our concern is not what humans have done. It is what humans could do. Your species has a capacity for warfare that exceeds any race in our records. If humans ever decided to fight, the results could threaten the peace of the entire galaxy. But we choose not to fight," Taimin said. "Choice is what makes us civilized." "Choice can change," replied Velthari. "Instinct cannot." The council spent 3 hours presenting evidence. They showed psychological profiles of human leaders. They analyzed human literature and movies, finding themes of war and violence in almost everything humans created. They even studied human sports, pointing out that even peaceful games like football were based on military tactics. Finally, it was time for the vote. One by one, the 12 council members gave their decision. The Crystal Etherians voted no. The Tall Centaurians voted no. The Plant Verdani voted no. Even the friendly dog-like Canary voted no, though their representative looked sad about it. When all 12 votes were counted, the result was clear. Humans were banned from all military activity in Federation space. Velthari stood to deliver the final judgment. Her crystal body caught the light and sent rainbows across the chamber walls. "By unanimous decision of the Galactic Council," she announced, "humanity is hereby prohibited from military service, weapon manufacturing, and combat operations within Federation space. This ban is for the protection of all civilized species and will remain in effect indefinitely." The chamber was silent. Even the alien reporters seemed surprised by how quickly and completely humanity had been rejected. Velthari continued, "Human military forces will be disbanded. All weapons will be surrendered to Federation authorities. Human personnel currently serving in any military capacity will be reassigned to peaceful occupations such as agriculture, engineering, entertainment, and cultural exchange." Sujin felt like someone had hit her in the stomach. Her whole life she had dreamed of commanding a starship and exploring dangerous parts of the galaxy. Now that dream was dead. Taimin bowed his head. "We understand the Council's decision. Humanity will comply with all requirements." But Jiho stood up. His voice was calm, but everyone in the chamber could hear the steel in it. "Council Prime," he said, "you believe you are protecting the galaxy from humanity. But someday something will threaten all of us, something worse than anything you have seen before. When that day comes, you will need protectors who understand war, not just peace. And we will not be there to help you." Velthari's crystal features remained unchanged. "Commander Jiho, we appreciate your concern, but the Council has decided that the risk of human violence is greater than any theoretical future threat. The decision is final." As the humans filed out of the chamber, Sujin heard alien voices discussing the decision. Some seemed relieved. Others worried about what they would do if they ever needed warriors and had none. Back on their ship, Jiho stood again at the window, watching Nexus Prime grow smaller as they departed. Taimin sat nearby, looking defeated. "What do we do now?" Sujin asked. Jiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We do what they ask," he said. "We become farmers and engineers and teachers. We put away our weapons and our uniforms. We become the most peaceful species in the galaxy." "And then?" Sujin asked. "And then we wait," Jiho replied. "Because someday, the galaxy will need warriors again. And when that day comes, they will discover that the most dangerous warrior is one who has learned to hide in plain sight." The ship turned toward Earth, carrying the news that would change humanity forever. But Jiho was already thinking about the future, about the long game that humans would have to play. The aliens thought they had disarmed humanity, They had no idea what they had really done. 23 years had passed since the Council's decision. Hyun-woo wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched the massive atmospheric processors work on the barren planet below. Kepler 442b was slowly turning green as earth plants and trees took root in the new soil. "Another successful terraforming project," said his assistant, a young Zentorian named Keltar. "Humans are truly gifted at making dead worlds come alive." Hyun-woo smiled. "We have always been good at adapting to new places. It is what we do." But as Keltar walked away, Hyun-woo's smile faded. He looked at his hands, strong from years of physical work. These same hands had once held a plasma rifle when he served as a lieutenant in Earth's Marines. Now they held soil samples and plant seeds. His communicator buzzed. A message from his sister Bo-Ra, who was studying alien creatures on a research station 3 systems away. "Brother," her recorded voice said, "I have discovered something amazing. The insect creatures on Sigma 7 have a complex military organization. They use tactics that remind me of something I read in our grandfather's old books. Isn't it interesting how nature keeps creating the same patterns?" Hyun-woo understood. Bo-Ra was not just studying alien animals. She was learning how they fought, how they organized, how they survived, just like many humans were doing all across the galaxy, hiding their real work behind peaceful jobs. On the trade station Omega 7, Woo-jin was preparing the evening meal for his restaurant. The smell of kimchi and bulgogi filled the air. Alien. Customers lined up outside, eager to taste what they called human comfort food. "Chef Woo-jin," said his regular customer, a large Corvani trader named Gorth, "your food always makes me feel happy. There is something special about human cooking." Woo-jin bowed politely. "Thank you, friend Gorth. Food is how humans show care for others." But Woo-jin knew the real reason aliens loved human food so much. Humans understood something that peaceful species had forgotten. Shared meals create bonds between warriors. Every dish Woo-jin served was designed to build trust and friendship. His restaurant was not just a business, it was intelligence gathering disguised as hospitality. In the evening, after the last customer left, Woo-jin went to his back office and sent coded messages to other human business owners across the way station. Hidden in reports about supply orders and customer preferences was real information about alien military capabilities, trade routes, and political tensions. Meanwhile, on the colony world of New Seoul, Jin-A taught her evening class. 15 human students ranging in age from 12 to 60 moved through what looked like a beautiful dance routine. Their movements were slow and graceful, like flowing water. "Remember," Jin-A told them, "each motion must be perfect. This is not just exercise. It is meditation, art, and cultural preservation." The alien observers from the local government nodded approvingly. They saw humans practicing ancient Earth traditions, keeping their peaceful culture alive. But any human military expert would recognize what was really happening. The dance was actually combat training. The slow, flowing movements taught balance, timing, and deadly strikes. The students were learning to kill with their bare hands, and the aliens watching them thought it was beautiful art. After class, Jin-A's advanced students stayed for cultural discussion. They sat in a circle and talked about traditional stories from Earth. "Tonight we study the tale of General Yi Sun-sin," Jin-A said quietly. "A great leader who defeated a larger enemy by using the sea as his ally. For 2 hours, they analyzed naval tactics disguised as historical storytelling. The students learned about flanking maneuvers, supply line attacks, and psychological warfare. To any alien listening, it sounded like humans sharing their cultural heritage. Across the colony, Dong-ho worked late in his office at the Cultural Preservation Center. Officially, he was a historian, collecting and storing human art, music, and literature for future generations. His computers held thousands of files about Earth's past, but hidden within the poetry collections and music databases were military manuals, tactical guides, and strategic analyses. Every piece of human military knowledge was carefully preserved and coded to look like harmless cultural materials. Dong Ho received a message from another historian on a different world. Hidden in what appeared to be a scholarly discussion about ancient Earth festivals was actually a detailed report on alien defensive systems around the core Federation worlds. The message made Dong Ho smile. The network was growing. Across dozens of worlds, hundreds of humans were quietly gathering information, staying in contact and keeping their skills sharp. They looked like farmers, cooks, teachers, and artists. But they were still warriors, just wearing different uniforms. On the outer rim of Federation space, Captain Li Ho guided his agricultural survey ship between asteroids, officially looking for minerals that could help grow crops on barren worlds. His crew of botanists worked at stations around the bridge, studying plant samples and soil compositions. "Captain," said his first officer, Kyung-soo, "we have completed the survey of the Titan system. The mineral content looks promising for agricultural development." Li Ho nodded. "Excellent. Send the report to Colonial Headquarters." But the real report was very different. The Titan system had perfect asteroid fields for hiding military bases. The planets had rare metals needed for weapon manufacturing, and most importantly, it was positioned perfectly to control 3 major trade routes. Li Ho's crew were not botanists. They were former Navy officers, Marines, and Special Forces operators. Their agricultural survey ship had hidden weapon systems and military-grade sensors. They spent their time mapping the galaxy's weak points and strong positions, all while appearing to search for good farming locations. That evening, Li Ho met privately with his senior staff in what appeared to be a routine planning meeting for the next day's survey work. "The Federation's defensive positions are weaker than I expected," he said quietly. "Their patrol routes follow predictable patterns. Their communication systems have obvious vulnerabilities. If anyone ever wanted to attack Federation space, it would be surprisingly easy." His communications officer, Young Ho, pulled up star charts on his tablet. "I have been monitoring alien military communications for weeks. They barely encrypt anything. They trust each other completely." "That trust is both their strength and their weakness," Li Ho replied. "They cannot imagine that anyone would betray the peace they have built." The meeting continued for an hour, analyzing Federation military capabilities disguised as a discussion about agricultural planning. By the end, Li Ho's team had identified 17 critical weaknesses in the galaxy's defenses. Back on Earth, the planet looked more peaceful than ever. The old military bases had been turned into schools and hospitals. Former soldiers worked as police officers, firefighters, and emergency responders. Earth's government focused on trade, education, and cultural exchange. But in a small office in Geneva, Director Minho read reports that told a different story. Hidden within routine communications from human colonies across the galaxy, he saw the truth. Humanity had not given up warfare. They had simply become invisible warriors. His assistant, Yoonji, brought him tea and a data tablet. "Sir, the monthly cultural reports from all human settlements." Minho thanked her and began reading. To anyone else, the reports looked boring. Updates on local festivals, art exhibitions, educational programs, and agricultural projects. But Minho had learned to read between the lines. Jinei's Cultural Center was training 300 students in combat techniques. Dong Ho's Historical Archive had compiled detailed intelligence on 12 alien military systems. Li Ho's Agricultural Survey had identified 50 strategic locations for potential military operations. Most importantly, the report showed that the network was holding together. After 23 years, humans across the galaxy still remembered who they really were. They were still warriors, just hiding in plain sight. Minho opened a secure communication channel and began typing a message that would be sent to every human settlement in Federation space. The message appeared to be about organizing a cultural festival to celebrate Earth traditions, but the real message was simpler. Stay ready, stay hidden, stay human. Because Minho knew something the aliens did not understand. Humans were not violent because they chose to be violent. They were violent because the universe was a dangerous place and someone needed to be ready when danger arrived. The aliens had created a galaxy-wide peace by eliminating the warriors who had protected that peace. But they had not eliminated the warriors. They had just taught them to hide better. And someday Minho knew the galaxy would need its hidden protectors again. The warning came from the edge of known space, where Federation deep space monitors watched for asteroids and cosmic storms. But what they detected was much worse than any natural disaster. Admiral Kethmore stood in the command center of Nexus Prime, staring at readings that made no sense. Ships were approaching from dark space, the empty region between galaxies where nothing was supposed to exist. But these were not ordinary ships. Computer, analyze the incoming vessels, Kethmore commanded. Analysis complete, the artificial intelligence responded. Vessel design unknown. Technology level exceeds Federation standards. Hull composition appears to be self-repairing metallic substance. No life signs detected. No life signs? Kethmore asked. Then what is controlling them? Unknown. The ships appear to be artificial intelligences of extremely advanced design. On the main view screen, images appeared from the monitoring station at Vega 7. 3 massive ships, each the size of a small moon, moved slowly through space. Their hulls were black metal covered with strange patterns that seemed to shift and change. Behind them came hundreds of smaller vessels, all moving in perfect formation. Council Prime Velthari materialized in the command center, her crystal form flickering with nervous energy. Admiral, what do we know about these visitors? Kethmore shook his head. Nothing in our databases matches their design. They do not respond to communication attempts. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Perhaps they are peaceful explorers, Velthari suggested. We should send a diplomatic mission. But before anyone could respond, the monitoring station at Vega 7 went silent. Vega 7, please respond, the communications officer called. Static filled the speakers. Long-range sensors showed the truth. The monitoring station had been completely destroyed. No warning, no negotiation, no mercy. The strange ships had simply erased it from existence. Send emergency signals to all Federation fleets, Kethmore ordered. Code red alert across all systems. Within hours, Federation military forces began moving toward the threat. The Zentaurian Third Fleet, the Etherian Defense Force, the Corvani Battle Group, warships that had not seen real combat for generations prepared for their first real war in 1,000 years, but they were not prepared for what happened next. Theond, first battle took place at Proxima Station, a major trade hub with a population of 12 million. Admiral Thys of the Verdani commanded the defense fleet, 47 modern Federation warships against 12 of the mysterious black vessels. The battle lasted 18 minutes. Federation ships fired their most advanced weapons, plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and gravity disruptors. The weapons struck the black ships and simply disappeared, absorbed by the strange hull material. The black ships responded with weapons that Federation scientists could not understand. Beams of dark energy that passed through shields as if they did not exist. Missiles that warped space itself, creating gravity wells that crushed Federation vessels. When the battle ended, all 47 Federation ships were destroyed. The 12 black vessels had not even been damaged. On Earth, Director Minho watched the reports with growing alarm. He called an emergency meeting of the Human Leadership Council, 15 men and women who had once been generals, admirals, and intelligence directors. The Federation is facing something they do not understand, Minho said. Their peacekeeping forces are not designed for real war. General Park Ji-won, now officially the Director of Agricultural Development, studied the battle reports on his tablet. These enemy tactics are familiar, classic hunter-killer formation. They are using the Federation's own momentum against them. What do you mean? Asked Admiral Song Yu-jin, who had spent the last 20 years working as a transportation coordinator. Look at the attack patterns, Park explained. The enemy lets Federation forces approach, then surrounds them. It is a basic military strategy. Any first-year cadet at the War College would recognize it. But the Federation military did not have war colleges. They had not fought a real battle in centuries. They had forgotten how to think like warriors. The second battle was even worse. At Rigel Station, 3 entire Federation fleets were destroyed in what human military experts would call a classic pincer movement. The enemy approached from 2 directions, forcing the Federation ships into a narrow space where they could not maneuver. Council Prime Velthari sent an emergency communication to Earth. Her crystal face appeared on Minho's personal screen, and for the first time in decades, she looked afraid. "Director Minho," she said, "the Federation Council requests immediate assistance from Human Civilian Support Services. We need help with evacuation planning, medical support, and supply coordination." Minho kept his expression neutral. Of course, Council Prime. Humanity is ready to serve the Federation in any way we can. But after ending the communication, Minho allowed himself a bitter smile. The same aliens who had banned humans from military service were now begging for help. They just did not realize what kind of help they were asking for. Within an hour, Minho sent coded messages to human settlements across the galaxy. The messages appeared to be routine communications about disaster relief and humanitarian aid. But the real message was different. "The mask is slipping. Be ready." On Kepler 442b, Hyunwoo received an urgent request to help evacuate civilian populations from threatened worlds. Officially, he was being asked to coordinate transportation and supply logistics. "Of course I will help," he told the Federation Emergency Coordinator. "Humans have always been good at moving people safely." But that evening, Hyunwoo met with his team of agricultural workers. They gathered in what appeared to be a normal planning meeting for crop management. "The enemy is using standard military doctrine," Hyunwoo explained, showing tactical displays disguised as farming charts. "They establish space superiority, then systematically destroy defensive positions. Classic orbital assault strategy." His second-in-command, formerly a Marine colonel named Taeho, nodded grimly. "The Federation has no idea how to counter this. Their ships move in predictable patterns. Their commanders follow safety protocols that make them easy targets." "What do we do?" asked Minji, a former naval intelligence officer now working as a botanist. "We do exactly what they asked us to do," Hyunwoo replied. "We help with evacuations. We provide supplies and medical support. We become the most helpful, peaceful species in the galaxy." "And?" Taeho asked. "And we position ourselves exactly where we need to be when the real fighting starts." On Station Omega 7, Wu Jin packed his restaurant supplies into evacuation containers. Alien refugees filled the corridors, fleeing from worlds that had been destroyed or were about to be attacked. "Chef Wu Jin," said his friend Gorth, "thank you for helping us. The Federation said humans would coordinate refugee support." "It is our pleasure," Wu Jin replied. "Humans believe in helping others in times of trouble." But hidden among the food supplies and medical equipment, Wu Jin packed items that had nothing to do with refugee relief. Communication devices that could penetrate military encryption, sensor equipment that could analyze enemy technology, and weapons, small, simple, but deadly, disguised as cooking tools. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Jinnae's cultural centers became refugee coordination points, staffed by her dance students who moved with unusual discipline and awareness. Dongho's historical archives became information processing centers, analyzing enemy movements and identifying patterns. Captain Lee Ho's agricultural survey ship was reassigned to help evacuate civilians from the outer rim worlds. His crew of botanists worked tirelessly to save alien families from the advancing enemy. But Lee Ho also used the evacuation missions to get closer to the enemy ships. His sensors, supposedly designed to analyze soil samples, were actually sophisticated military scanners that studied enemy hull composition and weapon systems. "Captain," reported his science officer Kyung-soo, "I have analyzed the enemy vessels. Their hull material is some kind of adaptive metal, but I have detected a possible weakness." "What kind of weakness?" Lee Ho asked. "The adaptive properties work by reading energy signatures and adjusting to counter them. But human weapons use different principles than Federation technology. Our kinetic weapons and chemical explosives might be more effective." Lee Ho smiled. Interesting. Make sure that information gets back to Earth through proper channels. Agricultural research reports? Kyung-soo asked. Agricultural research reports, Lee Ho confirmed. The enemy continued their advance, destroying Federation fleets with ease. But they began to notice something strange. Wherever human support staff were present, Federation forces lasted slightly longer. Evacuation procedures worked more smoothly. Supply lines were more efficient. The enemy ships, controlled by artificial intelligences that had fought wars for millions of years, recognized the signs. Someone with military training was involved in the Federation response. But their sensors detected no human weapons, no human warships, no human soldiers. They had no idea that the most dangerous human warriors were the ones who looked like farmers, cooks, and teachers. On Nexus Prime, Council Prime Velthari studied the latest battle reports with growing desperation. The enemy had destroyed 6 more Federation fleets and was now approaching the core worlds. "We need a new strategy," she said to Admiral Kethmore. "Our current tactics are not working." Perhaps, Kethmo, the Battle of Rigel Station changed everything. 3 Federation fleets, over 200 ships and 50,000 trained personnel had been destroyed in less than 4 hours. The enemy had used a simple tactical maneuver that any human military academy would teach in the first semester, but the Federation commanders had walked straight into the trap. Council Prime Velthari stood in her private chambers aboard Nexus Prime, her crystal form flickering with stress patterns that her species had not shown for millennia. The holographic display showed the advancing enemy forces, now less than a week away from the core Federation worlds. A soft chime announced a visitor. Admiral Kethmore entered, his usually proud posture bent with defeat. "Council Prime," he said, quietly, "I must speak honestly. Our military forces cannot stop this enemy. We need help that goes beyond evacuation support." Velthari turned away from the display. "You want to ask the humans for military advice?" "I want to ask them to save us," Kethmore admitted. "Even though we banned them from warfare, they are the only species in the galaxy who might understand how to fight this enemy." After a long moment, Velthari activated her communication system. "Send a secure message to Director Minho on Earth. Tell him we need to meet. Immediately." The meeting took place in a hidden chamber deep inside Nexus Prime, far from the public areas where reporters and diplomats might overhear. Velthari had insisted on absolute secrecy. Officially, the Federation was not asking humans for military help. Minho arrived with a small group of advisors. To anyone watching, they looked like typical human civilians, teachers, farmers, business managers. But Velthari noticed how they moved with quiet confidence, how their eyes constantly scanned for threats, how they positioned themselves to cover all entrances to the room. "Council Prime," Minho said formally, "humanity is honored by your invitation." "How can we help?" Velthari struggled with the words. For decades, she had insisted that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with weapons. Now she needed their help desperately. "Director Minho, the Federation faces extinction. Our military forces are being destroyed by an enemy we do not understand. We need advice, strategic consultation, nothing more." Minho nodded calmly. "We understand. What can you tell us about the enemy?" For 2 hours, Velthari and Kethmore shared everything they knew. Technical specifications of the enemy ships, battle recordings showing their tactics, intelligence reports about their apparent objectives. Minho's advisors listened quietly, occasionally asking technical questions. To the aliens, they seemed like helpful civilians trying to understand a complex situation. But any human military expert would have recognized what was really happening. General Park Ji-won, disguised as an agricultural specialist, was analyzing enemy formation patterns. Admiral Song Yu-jin, officially a transportation coordinator, was studying their logistics and supply requirements. Colonel Baek-soo Min, supposedly a cultural affairs manager, was evaluating their command structure and decision-making processes. After reviewing all the information, Minho spoke carefully. "Council Prime, we can offer some perspective on your situation. But we must be clear that this is purely civilian analysis, not military planning. Of course, Velthari agreed quickly. We would never ask humans to violate the combat ban. Minho smiled slightly. Then let me share some observations. The enemy appears to be using what humans would call combined arms doctrine. They coordinate different types of units to create overlapping advantages. Your forces are responding to each attack separately, which allows the enemy to defeat you in detail. Admiral Kethmore leaned forward. What would you suggest? Hypothetically, Minho said carefully, a successful defense would require coordinated responses across multiple systems. Instead of reacting to each attack, you would need to force the enemy to react to you. Create situations where their advantages become disadvantages. For 3 more hours, the meeting continued. Minho and his team provided what they called strategic analysis and logistical recommendations, but they were really doing something the Federation had banned, planning a military campaign. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. The aliens who had forbidden humans from warfare were now depending on human military knowledge to survive. As the meeting ended, Velthari asked one final question. Director Minho, do you think the Federation can win this war? Minho considered his answer carefully. Council Prime, victory is possible, but it will require the Federation to do things it has never done before. You will need to think like warriors, not peacekeepers. You will need to take risks, make sacrifices, and accept that some battles must be lost to win the war. And if we cannot do these things, Kethmore asked, then you will lose, Minho replied simply, and every civilized world in the galaxy will fall. After the aliens left, Minho activated a secure communication device. Within minutes, he was connected to the hidden network of human operatives across the galaxy. The masquerade is ending, he told them. Phase 2 begins now. Across Federation space, humans received coded messages hidden in routine communications. To alien observers, the messages looked like updates on humanitarian relief efforts and evacuation procedures. But the real message was clear: stop hiding and start fighting. On Kepler 442b, Hyunwoo called his agricultural team together for an emergency meeting. The 25 men and women who gathered looked like farmers and terraforming specialists. But when Hyunwoo began speaking, their posture changed subtly. The situation has changed, he announced. We are no longer just gathering intelligence. We are moving to active operations. His second-in-command, Tae-ho, pulled up what appeared to be crop rotation charts on his tablet. But the images actually showed Federation defensive positions and enemy advance routes. What are our orders? Asked Minji. We continue our evacuation support mission, Hyunwoo explained. But now we position Federation forces where we need them, not just where they think they should go. We start giving them tactical advice disguised as civilian recommendations. And if they figure out what we are really doing? Tae-ho asked. Then, we stop pretending and start fighting openly, Hyunwoo replied, because the alternative is extinction. Similar meetings happened across dozens of worlds. Jinei's cultural center became a command post for coordinating human activities across 3 star systems. Her dance students revealed themselves as trained special forces operators, ready to conduct reconnaissance and sabotage missions. Dongho's historical archive transformed into an intelligence analysis center. His team of researchers began producing detailed tactical assessments disguised as academic papers on alien sociology. Captain Lee Ho's agricultural survey ship stopped pretending to look for farming sites and began shadowing the enemy fleet, gathering critical intelligence about their capabilities and weaknesses. But the most important change happened on Station Omega-7, where Wu Jin was coordinating refugee operations. His restaurant had become a makeshift command center, processing thousands of evacuees from the Outer Rim worlds. Late one evening, as Wu Jin was reviewing supply lists, he noticed something unusual. An alien family from the destroyed world of Vega-7 was telling other refugees about what they had seen during the attack. The ships came from nowhere, the father, a Zentorian trader, explained. Our defense fleet fired everything they had, but the weapons just disappeared. Then the black ships fired back and our vessels were crushed like paper. But it was what the man's daughter said next that made Wu Jin pay attention. "Papa, remember the human ship that helped us escape?" The captain said something strange before we left. "What did she say?" the father asked. "She said the bad ships had a weakness, something about their metal skin being too smart for its own good." Wu Jin made a mental note and continued listening. Over the next few hours, he gathered similar stories from other refugees. Humans across the war zone were apparently sharing observations and theories about enemy weaknesses. But Wu Jin knew better. The humans were not sharing theories. They were sharing intelligence. Captain Li Ho's ship had discovered something important about enemy technology, and the information was being passed through the refugee network to other human operatives. By morning, Wu Jin had compiled a complete technical analysis disguised as a refugee interview summary. He sent it to Earth through normal humanitarian reporting channels, where it would reach Minho and be distributed to every human cell in the galaxy. The message was simple. The enemy's adaptive armor had a weakness. It could only adapt to energy, weapons it had encountered before. New types of weapons, especially simple kinetic attacks, could still cause damage. More importantly, the enemy artificial intelligence was overconfident. It expected Federation forces to use the same tactics that had failed in previous battles. It was not prepared for creative, unpredictable strategies. On Nexus Prime, Admiral Kethamore implemented the civilian recommendations that Minho's team had provided. Instead of meeting the enemy in direct battle, Federation forces began using hit-and-run tactics. Instead of defending fixed positions, they created mobile defense groups that could strike and withdraw. The changes seemed small, but the results were dramatic. For the first time since the war began, Federation forces The attack on Centauri Prime began at dawn, local time. 15 massive enemy vessels descended from dark space, their black hulls absorbing the light from the system's twin stars. Below them, 12 billion aliens lived in cities that had never seen war. Colonel Jae Sung stood in the command center of what everyone believed was the Centauri Evacuation Coordination Facility. Around him, 30 civilian volunteers worked at computer stations, supposedly organizing refugee transportation and emergency supplies. But anyone who looked closely might notice that these volunteers moved with military precision. Their communication protocols were too formal, their situation reports too detailed, their emergency responses too quick and organized. "Sir," called out his communications specialist, a woman officially listed as a social worker named Hee Jin. "Federation Defense Command reports that Admiral Zefton's fleet is 3 hours out. They have 42 ships." Jae Sung studied the tactical display disguised as a refugee tracking chart. 42 Federation ships against 15 enemy vessels. Under normal circumstances, the Federation would have had a significant advantage. But these were not normal circumstances. The enemy ships were each the size of a small moon, with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Admiral Zefton was flying into a massacre and he did not even know it. "Open a channel to Federation Command," Jae Sung ordered. "This is Evacuation Coordinator Jae Sung requesting immediate consultation with Admiral Zefton." Admiral Zefton's blue face appeared on the main screen. The Centaurian commander looked confident, even eager. His species had not fought a real battle in 3,000 years, but they still remembered the pride of protecting others. "Coordinator Jae Sung," Zefton said formally, "my fleet will arrive at Centauri Prime in 2 hours and 57 minutes. We will establish orbital defense positions and protect the evacuation operations." "Admiral," Jae Sung replied carefully, "our ground-based observers have identified several potential complications with standard orbital defense patterns. May I suggest some alternative positioning that might improve evacuation efficiency?" For the next 20 minutes, Jae Sung provided what sounded like civilian advice about the best locations for rescue ships and supply vessels. But he was really giving Admiral Zefton a complete tactical briefing, explaining how to use Centauri Prime's 3 moons as cover and how to coordinate attacks from multiple vectors. "Interesting suggestions," Zefton admitted. "Your evacuation experience has taught you much about space navigation." Humans have always been good at finding safe paths through dangerous places, Jae-sung replied. After ending the communication, Jae-sung turned to his team. Phase 3 is authorized. All units implement active support protocols. Across Centauri Prime, the masquerade finally ended. Jinny's cultural center in the capital city suddenly became a military command post. Her dance students revealed weapons that had been hidden in art supply containers and musical instrument cases. Within minutes, they were moving through the city in coordinated teams, establishing defensive positions and organizing civilian evacuations with military efficiency. "Ma'am," reported her senior student, a former Special Forces operator named Sung-ho, "all evacuation routes are secure. Citizens are moving to shelters in good order." "Enemy ground forces?" Jin-ae asked. "No signs yet, but our scouts report that 3 enemy ships are deploying what look like landing pods." Jin-ae smiled grimly. After 23 years of hiding, it felt good to be a soldier again. In orbit above Centauri Prime, something even more dramatic was happening. Admiral Zefton's fleet had just engaged the enemy vessels when his sensor operator reported something impossible. "Admiral, I am detecting new ships entering the system. Configuration unknown." "Federation reinforcements?" Zefton asked hopefully. "Negative, sir. The ships they appear to be human civilian vessels, but they are broadcasting military identification codes." On Zefton's view screen, 12 ships appeared that looked like ordinary cargo haulers, research vessels, and passenger transports. But as he watched, their hulls began changing. Armor plating slid into place. Hidden weapon ports opened. Sensor arrays deployed. "This is Captain Sora of the human vessel, Hidden Strength," came a crisp voice over the communication system. "Admiral." "Zefton, we are here to provide combat assistance." Zefton stared in disbelief. "Captain, humans are banned from military operations. You cannot be here." "Admiral," Sora replied calmly. "With respect, the ban prohibited humans from serving in Federation military forces. We are not Federation military. We are independent human defense contractors, and Centauri Prime has just hired us." The legal distinction was meaningless, and everyone knew it. But it allowed both sides to pretend that the sacred ban was not being violated. "Captain Sora," Zefton said slowly, "what are your capabilities?" "We specialize in unconventional warfare, Admiral. I suggest you maintain standard formation and engage the enemy from maximum range. We will handle the close work." Before Zefton could respond, the human ships accelerated toward the enemy fleet with a recklessness that terrified the Federation crews. But their movement patterns were not random. They were executing a complex tactical maneuver that used Centauri Prime's gravity well to increase their speed, while making them harder to target. Captain Sora's ship, Hidden Strength, led the attack. Her crew had been disguised as agricultural specialists for over a decade, but they moved through their combat stations with the smooth efficiency of a veteran warship crew. "Weapon status?" Sora asked. "All systems online," reported her tactical officer, Young Min. "Kinetic cannons loaded with tungsten rounds, chemical warheads armed and ready. Target the lead enemy vessel. Fire when ready." The human ships opened fire with weapons that the enemy had never seen before. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they used simple metal projectiles fired at tremendous speed. The enemy's adaptive armor, designed to counter sophisticated energy weapons, had no defense against a chunk of tungsten, traveling at 30% of light speed. The lead enemy vessel shuddered as human kinetic rounds punched through its hull. For the first time in the war, an enemy ship had been seriously damaged. But the real surprise came next. "Enemy vessel is attempting to adapt to our kinetic weapons," Young Min reported. "They are reconfiguring their hull armor." "Understood," Sora replied. "Switch to chemical explosives." The next salvo consisted of simple explosive warheads, chemical bombs that would have been primitive by Federation standards. But the enemy armor, busy adapting to kinetic impacts, was completely unprepared for chemical reactions. Explosions bloomed across the enemy ship's hull as human weapons found their mark again and again. On the Federation flagship, Admiral Zefton watched in amazement as the humans systematically destroyed an enemy vessel that had seemed indestructible. How are they doing this? He asked his tactical officer. Admiral, they keep changing their weapon types. The enemy adaptation system cannot keep up. It is brilliant. But the humans were not finished. All human vessels, Sora announced, on the combat frequency, implement boarding protocols. Boarding protocols? Zefton gasped. They cannot seriously mean to board enemy ships. But they did. Small assault pods launched from the human vessels, moving too fast and too erratically for enemy weapons to track effectively. The pods crashed, directly into enemy hulls, and human soldiers poured out. On the surface of Centauri Prime, Ginny watched the space battle through her command center's sensors while coordinating the ground defense. Her forces were fighting enemy landing parties with weapons and tactics that the aliens had forgotten existed. "Ma'am," Sung-Ho reported, "our teams have secured the spaceport and the main government complex. Enemy forces are being pushed back to their landing zones." "Casualties?" Ginny asked. "Minimal on our side. The enemy ground forces are not prepared for close combat against trained infantry." Ginny nodded grimly. The enemy artificial intelligence had been designed to fight space battles against advanced civilizations. It had never encountered an enemy that preferred to get close and fight with simple weapons. Above the planet, Captain Sora's boarding teams were discovering the same thing. The enemy ships were filled with robotic defenders designed to repel attackers using energy shields and plasma weapons. But the robots had no defense against humans armed with chemical explosives and metal blades. "Captain," reported squad leader Jun Seo over the communication system, "we have reached the enemy ship's command center. The artificial intelligence is trying to adapt to our presence, but it does not understand how we fight." "Explain," Sora ordered. "It keeps reconfiguring the ship's internal defenses to counter the weapons it expects us to use. But we are using weapons it has never seen. Knives, explosives, even our bare hands. The AI cannot adapt to something it cannot comprehend." Within 6 hours, the Battle of Centauri Prime was over. 3 enemy vessels had been destroyed, 2 had been captured by human boarding teams, and the rest had retreated to regroup. For the first time since the war began, the Federation had won a clear victory, but the cost of that victory was the end of humanity's greatest deception. Council Prime Velthari's holographic form appeared in Jae-Sung's command center, her crystal features showing emotions that her species had not felt for millennia. Shock, anger, and grudging respect. "Colonel Jae-Sung," she said, using his real M. The final battle began in the Nexus system, where the enemy had established their command center among the asteroids that surrounded the galaxy's most important space station. 50 massive enemy vessels formed a defensive wall around their flagship, a ship so large it could have been mistaken for a small planet. Admiral Minho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Earth's Promise. The ship had spent 23 years disguised as a cargo hauler, moving supplies between human colonies. Now it revealed its true nature, a battleship that combined human military engineering with Federation technology. Around him, his crew, worked at their stations with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had trained for this moment their entire lives. They wore human military uniforms for the first time in decades, proud to serve openly. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, Commander Yu Jin, "all human fleets are in position. 147 vessels ready for combat." "Federation forces?" Minho asked. "Admiral Kethmore reports that Federation fleets are standing by in reserve positions as requested." Minho nodded. The aliens were brave, but this battle required tactics and weapons they did not understand. Better to let them guard the evacuation routes while humans handled the fighting. "Signal all ships," Minho commanded. "Commence operation Homecoming." Across the Nexus system, human vessels that had hidden their true nature for decades revealed themselves as warships. Farming ships deployed missile launchers. Research vessels activated military sensor arrays. Even passenger transports opened weapon ports that had been concealed behind false bulkheads. But the most dramatic transformation happened on the surface of Nexus Prime itself. Jin-A walked through the station's corridors in full military gear, leading a team of Special Forces operators who had spent years disguised as cultural teachers and artists. Alien civilians stared in amazement as humans they had known as peaceful neighbors revealed advanced combat equipment and moved with military precision. "Ma'am," reported her second-in-command, Major Sung-ho, "all strategic positions are secure. The station's defense systems are under human control." "Enemy boarding attempts?" Jin-A asked. 3 separate landing parties tried to breach the outer hull, all eliminated. Jin-A was not surprised. The enemy artificial intelligence had expected to face Federation defenders who would try to protect the station using shields and energy weapons. Instead, they encountered human soldiers who used explosives, kinetic weapons, and close combat tactics. The enemy robots were designed to adapt to sophisticated technology, but they could not adapt to a human with a knife who moved faster than their targeting systems could track. Meanwhile, in space, the main battle was beginning. Captain Sora commanded a squadron of attack ships that had been disguised as medical vessels. Her crew included some of the most experienced combat pilots in human space, veterans who had been forced to pretend they were doctors and nurses. "Enemy fleet is moving to intercept us," reported her sensor operator, Lieutenant Young Min. "They are using standard defensive formation Alpha 7. Sora smiled. "They are still fighting the last war. They expect us to attack like Federation forces." "Orders, Captain?" "Signal Squadron 2 and 3. Implement the Anvil Protocol." The Anvil Protocol was a human tactic that no alien military would have attempted. It required 3 groups of ships to coordinate attacks from different directions while using the system's asteroid field as cover. The timing had to be perfect. The risks were enormous, and failure meant the destruction of all attacking forces. Federation military doctrine would never approve such a dangerous plan, but humans had been taking dangerous risks for their entire history. Squadron 2, led by Captain Hyun-woo in his converted terraforming ship, approached the enemy fleet from above the system's orbital plane. His vessel had spent decades moving between planets, installing atmospheric processors and building colonies. Now it carried weapons designed to crack open asteroids and enemy ships. Squadron 3, commanded by Captain Lee Ho, approached from below. His ship had surveyed hundreds of star systems, mapping resources and analyzing planetary defenses. Today, that knowledge would help him navigate through the asteroid field faster than enemy sensors could track. "All squadrons report ready," Sora announced. "Commence attack." The 3 human formations struck simultaneously from different angles, using tactics that confused the enemy artificial intelligence. Instead of concentrating their fire on the strongest enemy ships, they targeted communication nodes and sensor arrays. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy fleet, they tried to blind it. "Enemy formation is breaking apart," reported Young Min. "They cannot coordinate their defense." "Phase 2, Sora ordered. "All ships implement boarding protocols." This was the moment the galaxy had been waiting 23 years to see. Humans going to war without restrictions, using every skill and weapon they possessed. Assault pods launched from human ships, carrying soldiers who had trained in secret for decades. Captain Jun Seo led one of the boarding teams, his squad composed of former Special Forces operators who had been disguised as agricultural workers. "Target the enemy flagship," Jun Seo told his team as their pod accelerated toward the massive vessel. Intelligence reports indicate that the enemy artificial intelligence is housed in the ship's central core. The pod crashed through the enemy hull with tremendous force, and Jun Seo's team poured out into corridors filled with robotic defenders. But these robots had been designed to fight energy weapons and plasma rifles. They were not prepared for humans armed with chemical explosives, metal blades, and decades of suppressed rage. "Move fast," Jun Seo ordered as his team advanced through the ship. "The AI will try to adapt to our weapons, but it needs time to analyze our tactics." The human soldiers moved through the enemy ship like a force of nature, using every dirty trick and unconventional tactic they had learned during their years in exile. They used jury-rigged explosives made from farming equipment. They turned maintenance tools into weapons. They even used hand-to-hand combat techniques disguised as traditional earth dances. Behind them, more human boarding parties followed, each using different weapons and tactics to prevent the enemy AI from adapting effectively. On Nexus Prime, Council Prime Velthari watched the battle through the station's sensors, her crystal form flickering with emotions she could not name. "Director Minho," she said using his real military rank, "your forces are extraordinary." Minho, who had maintained his cover as a civilian administrator for over 2 decades, now wore the uniform of a human admiral. "Council Prime, we are doing what we have always done. We are protecting the people we care about. But the violence, the aggression, the willingness to take such risks, that is what war requires," Minho replied. "That is why you banned us from combat. You understood that we were dangerous." "And now?" Belthari asked. "Now you understand why that danger was always meant to protect you, not threaten you." The battle raged for 18 hours. Human forces used tactics that horrified their Federation allies and confused the enemy artificial intelligence. They sacrificed ships to save crews, then used those crews to board enemy vessels. They fought in ways that seemed chaotic, but followed a deeper logic that only warriors could understand. When it was over, the enemy fleet was destroyed or captured. The artificial intelligence that had threatened the entire galaxy was shut down by human soldiers who reached its core using methods no computer could predict. But the victory came with a price that everyone understood. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when they stopped hiding their true nature. In the aftermath of the battle, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session aboard Nexus Prime. The 12 alien leaders sat in their high chairs, looking down at Admiral Minho, who stood where Ambassador Taemin had once sat decades earlier. "Admiral Minho," Council Prime Belthari said formally, "the Galactic Council owes humanity a debt we can never repay. You saved not just the Federation, but all organic life in the galaxy. We did our duty, Council Prime. We also owe you an apology. 23 years ago, we banned your species from military service because we feared your capacity for violence. We were wrong." Minho considered his response carefully. "Council Prime, you were not wrong about our capacity for violence. You were wrong about why that capacity exists. Explain. You believed we were dangerous because we might become conquerors. But humans are not dangerous because we want to rule others. We are dangerous because we will do whatever it takes to protect the people we care about." Belthari was quiet for a long moment. "The Council is prepared to offer humanity full military membership in the Federation. We would be honored to have human officers leading our defense forces." But Minho shook his head. "Thank you, Council Prime, but we must decline." The alien leaders looked surprised. After decades of being excluded from military service, humans were turning down the opportunity to lead Federation forces? "We have learned something valuable during our years of exile," Minho explained. "The galaxy does not need human warriors commanding your armies. It needs human warriors protecting your peace." "What do you mean?" "We will return to our farms and schools and restaurants," Minho said. "We will continue to build your colonies,